Hi guys, and welcome back here to the Dev Realm, and today we're going to be carrying on our dialogue system. And if you remember, what we did here is that we open and close, which is perfect. And if you get out of range, the UI closes. Now we need to be able to interact with this UI, right, with the user interface here. So what we got to do is that we need to basically control that using the player controller to do that. Now, I could just pass the player controller and handle everything on my end, but I don't know what kind of game you are building. So let's work in the premise that you are building something that already has a UI and you just need to interact this piece of action. So how would you solve this problem using that approach, right? So the easiest way to figure out something like this is to create a trigger, on this case, an event dispatcher. So we're gonna call this EV-on UI or on dialog interaction. Perfect. And then we're going to duplicate or copy and paste. I'll just create another one in this case. EV on dialog and interaction. Perfectly. Now, when you interact, you can just call this. And when you're not interacting, you can just call that, right? End interaction. Now, let me know in the comments, guys, if you like to, maybe you have a better way of doing this. But this is how usually I do on my games. It's just that I call events on those kind of components. It doesn't, you can actually trigger an interface or whatever you want, but this is more straightforward. Because now, what I can do is I can open up my third-person character here. And on the begin play, event begin play, what I can do is I can get the the dialogue here, right? And I can call a bind event on dialogue interaction. And I can do another bind event here, bind event on end interaction. And I'll be curious to know if this has, in terms of performance, if it's better to do with the interface or using this. I am genuinely curious. So let me know in the comments if you guys have any thoughts about this, right? But anyway, let's create here a custom event called API start dialog interaction. And you can run this on the client, on the server. I think this only runs, on the client, to be honest. But we just need on the client. And we're just going to create here a custom event as well called API and dialog interaction. Right. Now, what we can do is that we can get controller. Now, the problem is that this only returns a generic controller. And we don't have access to the player controller. So I have to cast to player controller. And as you guys probably been following me for a while, I really don't like casting. But I'm not going to create interface just for this, all right? So now that we have this, we can set game mode to UI, right? Now, you see is widget in focus, right? All we can do, get this, get widget, and we can plug this one right here. You don't necessarily need to pass the widget, but it's just nice to have, right? Now the next thing we need to do is that because we have the play controller, now we can set show cursor or something. So it displays the mouse cursor to true. Now when you press play, look at that. You can click on things. Like you still are able to interact, but you can click on the UI. And if you get out of it, it hides, but now you have a problem. The mouse still shows. Let's fix the issue. So we're just gonna need to copy this, paste it right there, plug it here. Don't care about that. You just need to show the cursor on. I think you can actually set game mode only. We can actually do that. I don't care about this, but otherwise you can keep clicking in widgets and stuff. And look at that. Oh yeah, sorry. Hide that mouse. And this is basically sorted. So now we can interact, we can get a quest and say bye-bye, and we can carry on with our game. Now that we have everything set up in terms of structure, right? Handle the open and close of the UI, right? Now what we can do here on the dialog interaction is that when we open the dialog, we need to probably pass a couple of informations on here so we can handle what we are trying to achieve, right? Now I am gonna do everything on the dialog, so I'm probably not gonna do any logic in here. So I'm just gonna give some space to work. And what am I going to do here is on the dialog, I'm gonna go back to the graph. I'm gonna add a new variable, and this is gonna be called the dialog NPC, right? And this is gonna be how do we call this component? Browse to us this thing here. File and save. PPC dialog object reference. Make sure it's public, and you expose that on spawn, because if you don't expose that on spawn, it's not gonna show up here. So if I refresh that, it's not gonna show up. All you gotta do is just say pass the interaction actor, and then you plug it there. That should be everything we have to do here. Now we can actually focus on loading the questions and options. I'm gonna actually pause the video right here. I want you guys to get exactly to this point. So in the next episode, we started from just this part. All right. Thank you very much for watching.